from Nathan's view. Wow. Wow. Cat-like reflexes.
Oh goodness, Sebastian Coffre, another mistake for him, and he is a sitting duck down the front stretch here with the double draft here for Overbay and Ritters. Are they going to make it 3 wide? Ritters goes for it on Overbay, while Overbay goes for it on Coffre. Up the inside, coming into Doohan corner, and Coffre might have to yield here. He's already lost the place to Overbay. He's going to switch to the outside and try and widen the entry to keep Ritters behind him. Looks like he is going to do that. Late apex, and that will work out all right for Sebastian Coffre, but it's slim pickings at the moment for the number 28.
This is your chance to get behind the wheel. The opportunity to race just like the pros. From the grassroots levels, where we all got our start, to the most popular race cars on the planet. From the fairgrounds of Nashville to the high banks of Daytona, to tracks that will never be forgotten. Realistic driving, intense competition, all from the comfort of your own home. This is the ultimate motorsports simulation. This is iRacing.
The 2022 Major Series season has been one filled with excitement and drama. Sean Campbell has started off the year on fire, scoring victories in 3 of the 4 European Pro Split rounds. Last season's champion, meanwhile, Dallas Pataska, has had to scratch and claw his way back into contention after a horrific start to the year at Watkins Glen and Daytona. For Apex Tech Racing Pro drivers Chris Barrett and Jamie Conway, both of them started the campaign off in dominating fashion. They have since faltered in the standings. And now, as the season speeds its way through the calendar year towards the summertime, its top competitors are about to face a bit of a wild card. This is the Porsche Wild Card Round, live on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hello and welcome to the 5th race of the European region's Pro Split season for the Major Series at iRacing's virtual Donington Park racing circuit. My name's Justin Prince. Alongside me in the booth today is Jake Sperry, along with Ocean Puhaka. Behind the scenes is our director, Zach Johnson, and he's using cameras provided by the great Dougie Beard. Now today takes us to a facility that at one time was used by the British Ministry of Defense as a military vehicle depot as part of World War II. Donington Park. Let's learn more about its racing history with our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to Donington Park. This British track can boast the rare feat of hosting Grand Prix racing since before the advent of the modern F1 Championship. About a half-hour northeast of Birmingham, cars and bikes of many types have competed here. There are 2 layouts that can be driven: the Grand Prix version, which is roughly 2.5 miles, or the National Circuit, which is just under 2 miles. The only difference between them is the addition of the Melbourne and Goddard's hairpins at the end of the lap. This circuit is known for its fast, sweeping bends and difficulty in overtaking. There's also some extremely tricky blind apexes like at McLean's and Coppice. Ironically, one of the most famous and more difficult high-speed turns is called the Old Hairpin. Resembling nothing of its name, it includes a frustrating kinked entry and a very critical corner exit that leads to a long piece of uphill acceleration. The first turn of Redgate is a popular place for overtakes, but it carries an unusual danger. The pit exit empties right into the racing line, and if stops are expected during the race, it can prompt some treacherous exchanges. While the circuit is most well known for its extremely wet 1993 European Grand Prix, where Ayrton Senna blitzed the field for a win, currently the track is mainly used for lower-level open-wheelers and touring car racing. Overwhelmingly popular with British fans, Donington Park has established itself as a pivotal circuit in the UK racing scene.
That was a look at our GSRC track guide for Donington Park. Now, Jake, Today could be a challenging round for some, to say the least. What should we expect from the drivers here today when it comes to these Porsche 911 GT3 Cup 992 machines?
Well, this is the brand new car that Porsche and iRacing have put together, and what a track to put it at. The national layout is the sort of track which is where you cut your teeth, where you try and get into racing and understand what makes good overtaking. You need to be precise here. That run to the Robert chicane is probably going to be the last great chance to make passes, but you have to pay attention to everyone around you. This is going to feel like a touring car style race. This is going to feel like you're going to be looking left, right, forwards, and behind at almost every single time. I wouldn't be surprised to see drivers look to get aggressive, go 2 wide, go 3 wide. This is the sort of track where you just need to be on your line and holding your speed.
There's a lot to discuss in turn when it comes to these drivers entering today's round. Let's take a look at the driver standings because, as mentioned, Sean Campbell has started off very strongly. 4 top 5s, 3 victories, and 872 total points on the season puts him 99 points ahead of Dallas Pataska entering today. Thomas Cope, after his start to the season on the stock car side of things, put himself inside the top 3 entering today with 114 points back. Chris Barrett, as mentioned, started off the season well, but he did drop back to 4th as the season has progressed. David Monerwich rounds out the top 5. Of note, Jamie Conway, who started off the season dominating fashion directions while was at Watkins Glen for that mark. He dropped to 6th position. Brian Walker, Theo Chalet, along with David H. Baker and Gabriel Ruse, the top 10. Compare that to the sportsman side of things, and a new driver has risen to the top of the standings. It's Garen Batten. He had the most practice laps, in fact, entering for this week for NRG Racing ES. He leads his teammate Brian Boomstraw 73 points up. Alexander Olsen, Daniel Boomquist, along with Alexander Wegert, round out the top 5 entering today. Edward Shelley, Hakan Charlet, along with Jan Brony, Sean Brown, Justin Krutop, rounding out the top 10 entering today. When it comes to the legends, just 4 drivers fit into that category this season. David H. Baker has been the most consistent of those. He has made all the races so far. He leads that standings mark by 347 points. Mario Schroeder, along with Thomas Geisler, have also made starts this season 1 apiece. In Legend Sport, it's been a little more intense because Jambroni is within 12 points of the Bright Esports driver, Ken Chalon. Then it's Gary Thomas, Andy Banfield, Miguel Hagstrom, the top 5. The rest of the full-time drivers right on behind them with 3 or less starts, should say. Tommy Helmstrom, Wolf Dietrich Hotho, all the way down, 375 points, the top 10. Let's take a look at the team standings here, Ocean, as things have started to separate out on top.
Indeed, and you got some familiar names near the top with Apex Tech Racing Pro in the lead, 131 points ahead of Satellite Racing. Then you got the 2 Grizzly TFR teams, the Le Mans and Daytona, 3rd and 4th. Then you got Team Mad 5th, Udox Oliver, 6th, NSH, Leo Racing Team, Alcantech NHR, and Pure Motorsport White, rounding out the top 10 on the team side in pros. And 10 in sport, we got NRG Racing Spain, I think ES would stand for España. Bright Esports in 2nd place, HW Racing in 3rd. You got Hanson Brothers Racing in 4th, and Black Tree Race Crew in 5th. Then you got a lot of other teams as well, including the Apex Racing Group in 9th, which is an interesting name, which brings me to way back in the days. I hope they're putting on a good showing today. So a lot of familiar teams, a lot of familiar drivers, and gonna be a very interesting race, I shall think. Justin?
Interesting races. In fact, Jake, if we take a look towards those details, 2 races are on the docket today, 23 laps apiece.
And this is what we love about this circuit, 23 laps. They will go in the blink of an eye. A lap around here is only 65 seconds, and that's not even for the quickest drivers out there. So these races, they're going to go quickly. They're going to feel like sprints. The top 6 invert for race 2 as well. And you've got to remember that 26 instant point limit. Sounds like a lot for 23 laps, but when it's going to be close quarters and drivers are going to be trying to push themselves to the absolute limit on a national layout like this one here at Donington, it is going to be so easy to use up those instant points, pushing a little bit wide through the corners, trying to get as much as you can out of the track. They do have the one spare car, which means that they can still be in the race if they need to use it, but expect any driver who uses their spare car here today to be pretty much out of the running and way down the order.
Especially with the fuel mileage, expecting a no stop to make it to the very end on the gas mileage. Drivers are currently in the final 6 minutes or so of their warm-up session to prepare for qualifying. It's partly cloudy skies here today at Donington Park. 65 degrees Fahrenheit is the air temperature, 89 is the track. For centigrade, it's 18 degrees Celsius, 32 track temperature. The wind's also fairly gusty right now currently, blowing their way towards Compass in particular in the northwest at 60% humidity. All that is on May the 1st, 2022. Some nice conditions, to say the very least, Ocean, when it comes to these drivers. Fairly cool, not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah, so we're in UK, and for once it ain't raining, eh? Gotta get the weather jokes out of the way early. Very nice conditions, a very cool track as well. That's gonna help keep the tires in shape. That is one of the things I want to talk about before we go into qualifying, before we go into racing. So this is the kind of track, Donington Park, where tires are gonna be of very, very crucial importance. They're important everywhere. Like, all the time, when you hear pro drivers, when you hear like good drivers, certainly drivers of this caliber talking, you hear them talking about tires. It's all about the tires. And keeping the tires cool, keeping the tire surface temps cool is going to be very difficult here. Because, and I think Jake will agree with me when I mentioned there's not much of a point where the tires can breathe between red gate, the first corner, and when you head to the back straight. It's going to be just constant medium speed, high speed corners, and left, right. Even if you look at the SS, which you can see now, the SS section, that's normally flat out with an open wheeler, but it's not an easy flat with these cars. You have to keep it consistent. And then when you come into the old hairpin, as you can see here, interesting racing line, going a little bit wide, but it's going to be torture. So that's going to be something we are going to see affecting the race later on.
I mean, I'll just interject here as well here, Justin, and say that this is also a track where the middle part of the lap, there isn't a single corner which is taken at a level playing field as you drive through. So you're going to be dealing a lot with elevation change. This track has been here, there, and everywhere. It was potentially at one point in time a site for the British Grand Prix to jump over from Silverstone, were it not for the fact that Silverstone upgraded its services. We nearly had a Simply Sausages British Grand Prix. We didn't. But what we can say is that this is the sort of track, as we go on board with Sean Campbell, where right up there in towards Coppice Corner, that's just an example of it challenges you in so many different ways, especially on where you point to brake. For example, you've got that downhill dip and you've got to try and work on that roller coaster style braking into the final chicane. This is such a deceptively difficult track.
It's really tricky, to say the very least, but it's Sean Campbell who's been able to master it, at least in the practice session, about a tenth of a second up over Scott Brazier currently to have that top spot. Dallas Pataska, Chris Barrett, Ross Banfield, the top 5 in the session, 6/10 the separation here for this one. So who's followed on board with Sean Campbell. It's been an impressive start, to say the very least, for him too as well, Jake. The road courses, keep in mind, are his specialty, expecting big things from the number 5.
Yeah, the number 5's just been driving with absolute, I would say, authority so far this season. It's been a case of just doing your job, picking up the results, and the victories have been flowing, which has given him this lead in the championship, which he can be very happy about. And when you get that road understanding, it's a case of, well, if you can do the road courses, it's a case of you have the best ability and you are more likely to be up there fighting for victories on the road side. When it comes to the oval side and the oval preference, it would be more of a case where you're fighting more to gain time on the road side, where it's more of a pace feel than it is a positioning feel. And I think it's the pace versus positioning that makes this championship interesting.
Just a lot to think about, especially with qualifying coming up in just a moment or so. Might take time to give reference to the charities supported by this round for the major series, Envision El Salvador. For more information on today's charity for this round, go to www.weareenvision.com/El Salvador. And with these drivers coming in towards that qualifying session, we've seen how crazy some of these rounds can get, especially with the 2-round race format, should say. And here's the important thing. It's important to do well in both the races, Jake, because 50% of the points are scored in each of the races, meaning you falter in one, do well in another. Yes, you can recover some, but you don't necessarily get the same amount of, say, winning a full outright round. You'd have to do it for both.
Yeah, you certainly do. I found myself browsing YouTube the other day, and I ran across a 1996 NASCAR race at Suzuka, which was a very, very interesting race to go and watch and see and how that all came about. And it was very much a very similar sort of scenario. It was on the Suzuka East course, which feels very similar to this one here at Donington Park National, and it's got that same sort of understanding to it. You've got 23 laps to get yourself forward, to get as much as you can out of it. Top 6 invert, then you go again. And it's a case of, well, if you can get yourself up near the front early, that's good. And this is the sort of track where if you can get a couple places early, it will serve you in a much better stead as we will move over towards qualifying and the 4 laps that are needed to be put together to determine this grid.
All those required to be done with sole qualifying. And now it's time to see how that session fares out now. It's strict scrutiny for qualifying, keep in mind, so keep that in mind for the drivers preparing themselves to get up to speed for these 4 laps. Off and away we go for the session. Drivers making their way out onto the racetrack. Miguel Freitas amongst the first of them. Off and away goes everybody onto the circuit. And I'm curious on your approach as well in terms of how you would set up the car for a track such as this. What's your preferred balance, in your opinion, if you're a driver here in these Porsches here today, to get that right balance of downforce, but also having the right amount of speed down the straights?
I think this would be the sort of track where the straights, you're not going to get too much out of them. I think it's a case of needing that downforce for the Craner curves. A lot of these middle speed corners here are going to be difficult. The old hairpin and McLean's, I think, are the 2 corners that are the most interesting. I think Ossian here has a much better understanding of it than I do, because this is the sort of track which I think you just have to be punchy and aggressive with. It's not a track where you can be, I would say, conservative and stay laid back and hope to get a good result. You have to take the initiative.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword in a sense that you have to be aggressive with a lot of the corners, but you also have to be so very patient, as we are watching Miguel Freitas coming in towards Red Gate Corner. So Red Gate Corner, you approach all the way from the left side of the track. You have to brake quite early and then get the power down into the Craner curves, where you have to take it flat out with a qualifying trim. Then into the old hairpin, you have to approach it with a certain amount of care. You have to cut it to the inside. These cars can take the cut. Open wheelers cannot. These cars can take the cut. So let's see if he can actually cut it properly. Yeah, that's a nice one on the curve to the inside. And then Starkey's Bridge, McLean's turn number 7 is the most difficult corner on the track, in my opinion, because you come left and then you can see a little wiggle on the braking, and that's going to be very difficult. And he missed the apex by a mile there. If the apex was in UK, he was in France in that corner. 10 copies. The exit is super important. You have to get the power down early. Expect to get some wiggles there as the race progresses, once the rear tires heat up. And then instead of turning left from the SS, you go right. This is a right-left, the last chicane. You have to cut it nicely. Cut the first apex. Don't cut the second apex too much, and that's a lap of Donington. So it's a balance between aggression and patience, Justin. So it's going to be very, very exciting to see who can maintain that balance best in race conditions. In qualifying, it's more aggression. In race, a whole other deal.
Speaking of qualifying, though, Dallas Pataska up at the top of the board. That time from Freitas was the 106.3s. Pataska's was a 105 flat to start off. The 4 Flyers, Satellite Racing Machine, trying to settle things forward again. Remember, Pataska, very comfortable when it comes to these cars. When he's ran on the road courses, he's usually done so in this type of a car for his respective team, so expecting big things. Speaking of big times, though, Sean Campbell's already jumped past him by a 10th. How will Pataska counter this time around at the stripe? The end of his second lap coming up right here. Pataska, no incident points picked up on the lap. Only one incident point the whole qualifying so far. 104.9 for Talis Pataska.
Well, he was half a tenth down, and then suddenly he found himself half a tenth up. So you're seeing the swings and roundabouts here of what is going to be a very important session as drivers try to put their times in. Kurt Crum third, Dirks in fourth position, Hashimi up there in P5 with a good qualifying. And you're seeing here the likes of Sean Campbell really trying to get the most out of these laps. They only get 4. I'd expect the likes of lap 2, lap 3 probably to be the big laps that they're trying to get. And those who are maybe looking at going flat out, trying to get the most that they can out of this, this might actually be the sort of circuit today where they might need to wait, take a lap, 2 laps, get those tyres up to temperature, get them to attack. Because Sean Campbell on that second lap found himself a full 0.3 of a second. That puts him up there. Scott Brazier as well looking really good. He's third fastest at the moment in the 555.
Time's really picking up. Remember, Brazier has been really quick in qualifying. It's not been the best of luck, though, in the races so far. Pataska with a 104.7 that time. Here's a look at Brazier. And that's going to be the important thing for the 555 is the last time he started up front, he ended up in the sand trap, and that was with the V8 over in Australia a couple weeks ago. And that was also a 2-race format for a round. He wasn't able to recover from the mistake before. This time around, he puts up a 104.7. He tops Pataska to get up to second on the board. The top drivers in the standings separated by a couple 100ths, all of them approaching and or starting their final laps.
And this is vital in terms of this stage. Everyone's searching for times and trying to get there. Campbell's gone even quicker still. Another 1/10 of a second found on the lap. Here's Chris Barrett, though, in 4th position. And Ossian, if you're in the championship hunt, you're looking for good results, you're looking to try and move up in terms of times, being inside that top 6 today, how important is it to start in a transfer position for the reverse?
It's absolutely crucial. So you have to get into the top 6, but more importantly, if you are in a championship hunt, you can't worry about the championship. You just take one race at a time and try to do the best you can. Meanwhile, no need to go do it, but Sean Campbell cancelled his last lap, so he has done his qualifying. Let's see how Bert does.
Scott Brazier also coming across the stripe to close out his session, did not top his best time. Chris Barrett, 4th on the board, a 105 flat. Their team was amongst those who put in the most time in the final practice session. In fact, just about all the drivers have completed their sessions already. That's how quick this racetrack is. But there is one driver who's yet to record a time, and just did, in fact, a 107, though. It's Lyndon Swaby. And this is the first time in a while we've seen Lyndon Swaby. In fact, I believe the first time this season we've seen the 424. A longtime series veteran who's appeared in this series over many seasons, Jake. Looking to pick up the pace here today in this 424.
Yeah, Lyndon Swaby is the sort of driver that I've had the privilege of knowing and understanding before a lot of other drivers did. I saw him race in a British Sim Racers Kia World Series once upon a time, about 5 or 6 years ago now, and he's always been someone who's been looking to improve, looking to find his pace level and jump up through the realms. And it's nice to see Lyndon Swaby out here. It's nice to see him trying to get as much time as possible out there. But it's just an understanding of what makes this series difficult, because he's 2.5 seconds off of the pace at the moment, running through that final chicane. Everything online looks nice, but there is a different technique of driving these Porsches than there are other machines out there. That will certainly help. A 105.8 out there moves up to 20th position only. So 1.2 seconds adrift. 0.2 of a second would be enough to move inside the top 15.
The whole top 20, keep in mind, very tightly contested this round, it seems. In fact, that top 20, 1.3 seconds the separation. There's a little bit of fall off after that with Jeff Schmeier, along with David Baker, Travis Henderson, Cordell Cologne, Tom Dowling, all behind him on the board currently. It'll be amongst the final drivers to be able to set a time up on the board. Everybody else outside of him in Dryling have completed all 4 of their laps already. And of course, Kinetic Racing has had some emotional times over the past year or so. Remember, Racing for John hashtag on the machine. It was about a year ago They had their emotional moments in their organization's history with John Kane. When the Swabi keeping the honor going on their cars here today for Kinetic Racing. Can he move himself up on the track and the board? Yes, he can. Top 10 for Lyndon Swabi.
That's exactly what you need. Top 10 on a lap says that is where I want to be. And around 10th position is around the time you can say, I can make a legitimate push over the opening couple of laps. Couple cars get together in front of me. I can move forward over the course of a race. This is going to be the sort of place where you'd say, yes, this is the right time. This is the right moment. I want to go out. I want to be aggressive. If I was somewhere between P10 and P12, I'd say I'm going to be aggressive out there. I'm going to go and make moves, and I'm going to try and move myself up to try and get to P6.
Qualifying has come to a close. We'd like to take the time to remind you that the Majors Series is sponsored by the Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. Get help from any of the garage coaches 24/7. Sign up now for awesome, affordable monthly subscriptions, telemetry, coaching, and more at majorsgarage.com. Or use special discount code MajorsGSRC for 10% off. Yes, MajorsGSRC for 10% off. We have a link in the description below that directly applies to the special offer. Drivers have once again wrapped up qualifying. It's Sean Campbell who picked up the top time in this session, and he'll get the chance to lead them to the green for the first race of two. Let's take a look at that grid as Campbell and Brazier will be on the front row today, followed by Pataska and Barrett. Kirk Crum, very quiet session in practice, very quiet qualifying in 5th. Ross Banfield, he's performed well on the road courses this year. He's in 6th. Jamie Conway in 7th. Jan Jurek starts in 8th with Elvis Bonello making an appearance today in 9th. Lyndon Swabi, who did not set a time in practice, did record the top 10 in session, Jake.
He certainly did. Ryan Walker then will go from 11th with Treva Vavrovsky in 12th place. Gabriel Roos and Kamal Hashimi right up there at the beginning of qualifying. He's bumped back to 14th. Miguel Freitas and David Melnarovic will be on row 8 of the grid. Christian up in 17th and Josh Wolf in position number 18. Jens Hohmann will start from 19th and Joshua Thomas who round out 20.
21st spot goes to Jeff Smyer with David Baker in 22nd. Travis Henderson, Cordell Cologne, Tom Dowling rounds out the entries for today. 13 rows of drivers, and all of them getting ready for a standing start here at Donington. Ocean, real quickly, your keys to victory for race 1.
Don't be a hero, don't be an idiot, be fast, don't be slow.
Very simple indeed, and very quick those respective points. Just waiting for the last of the drivers to make their way to the starting grid for the first of 2 races here today. 25 drivers ready to get things rolling here. Should be an exciting race to say the very least, Ocean.
Yes, it should be, and what should be one of those races where they have to be very careful on lap number 1. You always have to be, but especially here because you got medium speed corners, you got fast corners coming up, cold tires. Gonna be very, very crucial to keep it on the track, keep it on the straight and narrow.
All the drivers are on the grid, 23 laps up on the board. The engines are revving. The green lights are out. We're underway from Donington, and several drivers don't get going on the start. Everyone going 3, 4, 5 wide into the corner. Near contact several times over, all while the leaders keep it nice and calm through Red Gate off to Hollywood.
And that was just down to Chris Barrett. He went nowhere off of the start, and it is an art trying to get these machines sorted. And now you suddenly realize as you go into the old hairpin for the very first time, they are all pretty much on a line. They are all hoping they've got it all sorted. A bit of side-by-side there in the middle of the pack as they try and charge forward now under Starkey's Bridge. And this is a tough place to go and battle. You can see how far he's fallen off the start. He's back in P15.
A very rough start after some of the drivers did not get going. Durix, Barrett, Swabi all had struggles coming out of the starting blocks. Still 2x2 towards the back of the groupings, trying to sort themselves out. That's the number 11. Christian Arup making his first appearance of the season, trying to sort things on out along that outside groove. They're meanwhile trying to block their way towards Roberts in the back of the pack. A little bit of a lock up and a slide. There goes one of the Apex Tech cars into the sand. That's Chris Barrett with a disastrous first lap from the top 5 to the back.
It happens as quickly as that. You make one mistake off the start, you're in and around people that you're not used to racing. Ossian, you understand that a lot better than a lot of other people. When you're not racing against people you're expecting to race against, it throws you.
It throws you, and he got flustered after the start too. He was berating himself probably on the first lap, trying to make positions up as quickly as possible. Maybe forgetting about the point I made before the race. Cold tires, you have to be mindful of toes. Trying to go to the inside and then making a mistake. Go on.
That's Miguel Freitas who goes off the racetrack. 3 wide they were because another car, Gabriel Ruse, also went wide. And they're still having those mistakes come in, and that's the main trigger we've seen in practice. We've seen a bit in qualifying. You overrun the exit through old hairpin.
Oh, there we go.
Go off, or you can spin coming out of Coppice.
It can happen so quickly. Drivers are going to be pushing so hard. These are machines that you've got to be alert to. And oh my goodness me, that is a huge moment. And around we go. That was not part of the script there. And that ultimately ends up in a huge disaster. And I'd say that Lawnmow's not there. And again, around goes the Apex car. This has been a torrid time for the likes of those who have been unable to get any pace sorted. There is car 45, Jan Dirt. Apex Tech have had a shocker.
The reason for that big moment and the big O there was out of Coppice. Mirolich did have that spin, but the rejoin is what sent Cordell Colon off the racetrack, his teammate. Absolute calamity in the heart of the pack. By the way, the top 3 have settled in 1.3 seconds separation. Ross Banfield is already holding on to the top 5 in front of Jamie Conway.
Yeah, and he's doing very well in this race here. Ross Banfield, you definitely have to keep an eye on car 15 in 5th position in this race, because he is the sort of driver who's gone out there, knows how to deal with different machines. And I'd say on top of that, Justin, he was a driver who was racing very consistently when it came to the Skip Barber Racing School Dallara Formula Series. So he's certainly someone who can go out there, has been out there racing, has been racing against some of the best drivers in the world when it comes to sim racing, and he finds himself in P5. It just shows you how good these 4 drivers in front are in this Porsche category as they drive forward. You can see here those drivers trying to really attack up through, and this is where you can start just being a little bit calmer. Top 3 now will be trying to position themselves in order to attack a little bit later on in this race.
Top 6 settling themselves down after calamity has struck everywhere else, it seems. Joshua Wolf, by the way, off the track and trying to find his way out of the grass right by Starkey's Bridge. But outside of that, things started to get a little calm for a minute. Travis Henderson just went off as soon as I finished the sentence. It's been that type of a day, Ocean, already, and it's lap 5.
Yeah, so drivers not heeding to those warnings said about the early laps, said about the cold tires, and now a lot of them have to play catch up, and that can have a mental effect. As I mentioned earlier on, you can get very easily flustered when you make mistakes, whether the mistake is on the start of the race or whether you get caught up in somebody else's mistake, and that's something which throws your plan. It's like they say in boxing, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, in racing, it's the same deal. Everybody has a plan until they're involved in an accident. Then the plan goes out of the window, and then you have to improvise. Problem, you're also trying to herd 500 horsepower race car around the very narrow Donington track as you have to come up with a new plan. So now we have a good race between Walker and Wawrowski trying to throw to the inside, and that was never going to work down to Coppice. So that's another thing that they have to deal with, especially the drivers who are now in the back. It's very difficult to overtake here. It's not impossible to overtake, but you have to be very, very patient with your overtaking. I'm going to throw this to Jake because you've seen a lot of races here at Donington. You're familiar with the British circuits. You have to set up the overtake over multiple corners here.
Absolutely you do. It might sometimes take a lap. Here's a little look to the outside, trying to get this move sorted. Redgate, a place where everyone can go in, but it does squeeze off on the exit, and you can see that 97 machine doing exactly that. Little bit of side-to-side contact as they drive through. Walker there with Wawrowski and down the Craner curves. You cannot afford to be too aggressive through here. That old hairpin corner is probably one of the most loaded corners on this circuit. An instant there has massive ramifications.
I understand the satellite racing cars have the no passing zone logos on their back bumpers here today. I don't think they're supposed to be the literal instinct of that. It's been difficult to pass for some with some of the bumping and the banging. Walker trying to hold on with Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky trying to back it on up for the exit. Remember, he had the better run coming out of Roberts last time. This is the fight for 9th. 10 seconds back in the race leader. 17 laps to go this time at the stripe for them. And Bobrovsky much more comfortable coming through that section compared to Walker. He's going to try it again on the left side. Well, it works this time on the outside through Red Gate. Last time it led to bumping. This time Bobrovsky tries to go for the switchback. Nearly hits the back bumper instead. Takes the bottom away through Hollywood.
Well, try down the hill as you might. He will be side by side. If he can hold it through this right, he's got the line. Oh, there's the contact. Round you go to go, Bobrovsky. That's the dangers of the Craner curve. You have to leave that room because the car's naturally going to fall away through that second part of the Craner curves, and Bobrovsky finds it out the hard way.
Trevor Bobrovsky coming back onto the racetrack. He was again in the battle for 9th. And a tough break, back-to-back laps with bits of contact, but in the end, it's Bobrovsky who loses all the track position back to 19th position after starting inside the top 12. Meanwhile, up the road, Lyndon Swaby has dropped to 14th since the start. He's amongst those trying to fight with Jeff Schmeier. Schmeier, remember, had some struggles in qualifying, up +5 in this race already, looking to make it +6.
And you can quickly see how positions can add up, and as you move forward and gain a little bit here and a little bit there, they really do rack up in a race like this. Drivers know that 23 laps doesn't sound like much. We'll be aggressive. We'll go and try and make moves. Well, the counteract to that is, well, drivers are going to go and make moves, and they're going to make mistakes, and you're going to pick up places. You're going to get back up into position, and those places are going to be so valuable come at the end of the race. I think that's where we're going to be seeing the very best, and they can see already a little bit of battling going on. Ross Banfield here in 5th position. He'll be looking right behind him because Jamie Conway knows he wants to make that move, but how badly does Conway want to make this move? Because he's got the final transfer position. He'd have pole position for the second race.
And that's the key thing. There is that 6-car invert for the second race of the day, and that is a major thought for some. But remember, points could also be a factor when you think about the championship picture. Conway was amongst the championship favorites in the opening rounds of the season before slipping back to the recent rounds of the season. See if he elects to try and get things forward or elects to continue to wait on in the wings and look for the opportunity. By the way, the battle for 9th position is still busy. Brian Walker is now being hounded by not just 1, but 2, not just 3, but 4 cars, because Eric Freitas, Ruse, as well as possibly Jens Holman, if this continues, are right there in closing. Holman isn't just in the backdrop. 3 are currently within striking distance, and there goes one of them. Gabriel Ruse is off.
That's one of those. Sorry, Jake. That's one of those things that can happen so easily in the old hairpin. You cut too much to the inside, and then you just wiggle a little bit. Thankfully, only losing 2 positions and not the entire race. Go on, check.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And you know, Justin, you see it a lot in these sorts of races, how drivers just start thinking that they're okay, they're calm, they're safe, they're not in direct problems with drivers behind, and then all of a sudden click the fingers and it's going to be a case of a mistake being made. You have to be alert minute 1 to minute last. You cannot switch off in this race.
Especially with how quick the race is going, already nearly halfway through it. Following along Miguel Freitas, center screen 10th position currently. The interesting thing when it comes to Miguel Freitas, we've seen him in many different series, especially these types of cars, do really well. In the major series though, Jake, it hasn't really clicked so far this season. Was expecting to be possibly up towards the lead group with this type of a car based on some of his experience.
Yeah, and this is really, really important right now. You know that with that experience, you've got to be driving up through the field, and you've got to be patient in a race like this. You can see here there's battle going on right now. Just behind, you've got all of these drivers just thinking about what they do. Freitas is there, Arp is there, you've got Roos thinking about moves as well. This is all about, okay, we're in a position, we've got to try and do the best we can with what we've got at this moment in time. And if you're in a pack, you've got to be very alert to how that pack works. Do you work well within that pack? Do you get opportunities to go out and drive forward and make something happen out of this race. If not, if you're just thinking about racing amongst each other right now, then you're only thinking of the one position that's in front of you. They see that car that's starting to disappear down the road. That one there, Kamar Hashimi. That's what they're going to have to try and work to get towards. If they can't get there and they're at halfway and they're there 5 laps to go and their gap still hasn't moved, that's when you start fighting amongst each other.
Speaking of fights amongst each other, up for the race leads, Sean Campbell started off by pulling away around 6 to 7 tenths or so. Now Campbell's gap has been reduced to within 3 tenths. The lap times are getting quicker for Brazier. Pataska's also starting to pick it up a little bit. And as you've noted, Ozgen, a little bit tighter lines when it comes to Brazier. Campbell starting to struggle a bit after being strong from the get-go.
Yes, so if you look at Scott Brazier in the 555 from the second place, he's doing very well right now on turn number 1, just turning in late enough because he doesn't want to be too close. There's no point being touching the bumper of Sean Campbell right now. He's just biding his time, waiting for a mistake. He can't be too conservative here, but once he leaves a gap, you can see how quickly the gap evaporates once again, getting a better run up to the hill. Then you come to McLean's, and this is where he's been really strong this race. You see some slight wiggles on Sean Campbell already, and he's having to use all of the track. I think in terms of tires, Brazier is in a slightly better position, and that might pay dividends as this race goes on. Remember, we got 12 laps still to go on this one. So if you're starting to feel the tires now, then it's gonna only snowball and become even more of a relevant factor as the race goes on. And Brazier right now, he's got all the time in the world because Pataska is losing behind him. So he's got time, he can wait this out. It's gonna be very exciting to see what happens between these two drivers.
To emphasize that point, Pataska lost a 10th to the race leader Campbell, but Brazier picked up a 10th on Campbell himself. Already to the back bumper, cutting up to the whole old hairpin this time. When does Brazier make the move? As Jake had referred to, about 5 to go was that thought process before. But does Brazier have the speed to take advantage? A little bit boxed in. He's got to run, heading towards McLean's right now. Not able to send it up quite yet. Still trying to set this up already, Jake. Good positioning for the 555 after what had been some rough rounds from the road courses before today, despite the pace.
He's got the pace, that much we know, but fortune favors those drivers who try and be brave, and Brazier is the sort of driver who is willing to put everything on the table, even if it means that his race result goes in kind. And as he pushes forward through that final section of road, moves on to this front stretch once again, he really sits underneath. He's thinking about when's the right time to make that pass, and he can't get there into Redgate, turn number 1. This is what we've seen quite a lot with these Porsches as they've gone out and they've attacked and they've tried to get as much as they possibly can from these races. The key is you will struggle to find a way through, and that was a little bit of a grab of the grass moving forward through the crane of curves. It just shows you how much of the track Campbell's having to use to try and keep himself ahead of Brazier.
Brazier getting really loose, I've noticed as well, too, trying to push right in this sector last time, got really snappy, coming through Coppice. Losing a lot more ground this time. Pataska picking back up the ground that he was losing a while ago. Brazier this time, no major bobbles though. Coming up 9 laps to go this time. Lap traffic may become a bit of a factor with some of those who were involved in some of the incidents earlier. Tom Dowling is about 15 car lengths up the road. Then it's about clean sailing up to Cordell Cologne, who had that off-track spin as a result of some issues. Their driver just went off-track for reference, Joshua Thomas, from the edge of the top 20. Still keep an eye on the race leaders, though. Brazier continues to be stronger in sectors 1 and 2.
He certainly has been. And this is an important section of track here. If you're good in the first 2 sectors, it gives you a good run in towards corners like McLean's, like Coppice. If you've got that chance to go and attack, that's brilliant. But the main places to get it done are in the final sector going towards Redgate turn 1. And if Campbell keeps maximizing that section of track, there's nothing Brazier can do. He can stare at that rear wing as much as he wants to. He is not going to find a pass. I think Pataska's been the quiet driver, the good driver in this race. He's just been watching these top 2 battle, hopes that one of them's going to get too aggressive or too defensive. out there that those two come together and he'll pick up easy places. You can see another little look into the mirrors. That is 101 of the Sim Racer's handbook of what you need to do. You just get in the mirrors, you try and force a mistake, and you get a mega run like this to move side by side towards Red Gate Corner.
Side by side for the race lead. Campbell tries to hold on to the inside. Brazier tries it on the outside. Campbell runs against the rumble strips in Redgate. Gets himself back clear. Here comes Pataska. He's back in the fray with under 8 laps to go. 3 cars covered under a blanket. These are the top 3 fastest cars on the track.
They absolutely are, and they're throwing everything together. Ossian knows as well just how it means to be in these close sorts of fights like these. And Ossian, you know, you put yourself in a group of 3, and now they're starting to worry about lap traffic. What goes through your head, hoping that drivers decide that, firstly, A, they're going to play ball with you as you go by them, but secondly, how you're going to play ball with the cars behind and hoping you catch cars in the right position.
Yeah, so Brazier has the most difficult position here because he has to make the move. He was already close once, but I think what he needs to do right now is avoid getting caught into Campbell's rhythm, which is what led to that overtaking opportunity, is that he took his own line through the last chicane instead of following Campbell's line, because Campbell right now, he's turning in a little bit too early in a couple of these places, and Brazier's following him through, and you can see Brazier being stronger on the brakes, but right now he's feeling the tires. Meanwhile, they get the lap traffic out of the way brilliantly. As for Dallas Pataska, he can just watch. Dallas Pataska can just watch right now and wait for the leading duo to make their move. So whoever is brave enough to turn in later, as crazy as it sounds, you need to be brave to turn in late at this point because you're feeling the tires go out from underneath you. You have to be brave, you have to hold on to that racing line. Don't take the conservative inside line, maximize those exits, because maximizing the exits is going to be the key for Scott Brazier to unlock the door that Sean Campbell has put out in front of him, Justin.
6 to go this time by. These drivers up to a 10th per lap quicker at minimum. To the rest of the pack, Brazier again deeper in the brakes. Loses a bit of ground once again through Roberts though. Coming down Wheatcroft straight. 6 to go, taking at the stripe. It's down to these 3 for the chance to come away with the first victory of the day of 2. Of note, Jamie Conway is still holding on to the inversion pole position in the 6th spot behind Ross Banfield as this pack starts to compress. But that draft factor to be considered here, Ocean, in particular. Remember, the draft considered to be fairly strong in these cars.
Yeah, so you get some draft onto the back straight, but the problem with the back straight is that it ain't very long, the Starkey straight. You come out of copies, it's a relatively medium speed, high speed exit of a corner, but it's not long enough for the draft to really give you too much of an edge. As we see Scott Brazier now running a little bit wide. I think he's overheating his tires at this point. I saw him on the turn number 1. I thought he went a little bit too late on the brakes. He was turning with the brakes. He had his brake balance quite up in the rear and using the brakes to turn the car in. All fun and dandy. You can trail brake with these cars and it's the fastest way. But that's also very, very heavy on the tires. So I think Brazier has to take a deep breath for 1 or 2 laps and then concentrate for a final attack when it's like 3 to go, maybe even 2 to go. Instead, he is once again braking later in turn number 1, getting a bad exit. That's not the way you want to do it.
And here's the other thing to consider too, on top of things. Had a conversation with Zach Campbell for the Porsche Take Care Esports Super Cup on Thursday for a podcast interview. And he talked about where there were times where you have to set up a car for a clean air, but also have it a setup for when you're in the pack, as in with the aero wash and the aero push effect in front, and that also may be a possible consideration for some of these drivers with 4.5 laps to go, with them trying to get so close in these corners.
I think it's telling that you see Brazier here. He's dropped back a couple tenths of a second over the last couple of laps, giving himself a little bit more room, giving himself time to close back up again and attack once more, because that ability to go out there and attack and stay behind at 2 tenths, yeah, that's going to be good short term. You're going to be harrying and harassing, but the worst thing you've got with that is you're going to lose all that time. You're going to really have that dirty air, that wash over the car, and you're going to be really dropping back a lot of time. It's been an interesting fight between them for the top 3. I'd say as well, it's been interesting as well, 4th, 5th and 6th. Crum, Banfield and Conway have been out there trying to get what they've done, and Conway, I think, is very important to note, hasn't made the move on Ross Banfield, who's been stuck in position number 6.
Staying stationary within 4/10 of him for reference sake as we still stay with the race leaders. The gap continuing to grow. Campbell looking to close it out with 3.5 laps to go. Of note, Kurt Crum is starting to fall back. He was having about a 1.5 2-second buffer to Banfield and Conway. That gap has cut itself in half over the past few laps. In fact, he's lost about 0.5 tenth per lap on average the past 5 to Banfield and Conway.
And that's how quickly you can put yourself in the wrong position. This is a car where if you overdrive it, you can very easily find yourself on the wrong end. And, you know, this is the sort of car I think Ossian has a better understanding of, which just drives completely differently to almost everything else out there on the service. It's the sort of car where you have to nurse it through a few corners, you have to nurse it through a few laps to get the best out of it.
Absolutely, Jake, and that's a good point you brought up, because this is a car with a very light front end. You know the classic Porsche layout. You got the engine in the rear, you got the drive in the rear, you got all the weight in the rear. So what you have to do here is drive with the rear of the car. I don't know, a lot of you may remember the likes of Enzo Bonito, who did that so well on the iRacing service, where they drove with the rear of the car. They could absolutely feel the mechanical grip out there. Sure, you have aerodynamics, but in terms of driving, you have to feel those rear wheels. You're turning with the throttle, and when you come into the corner, you're kind of like using the wheel a lot because it's doing very little. It's doing very precious little. So if you're somebody like me who used to drive at the front of the car, expecting the bite, living for that bite in the front end, it's gonna be a very difficult experience, especially when it comes to nursing those tires, feeling that car, because car is a living being. You have to nurse it, you have to feel, okay, what are the tires doing? Am I overdriving it? Am I not overdriving it? If you can't feel the front end, it can be very difficult to judge.
Meanwhile, the battles continue, coming to 2 to go for some of the drivers. Freitas having to deal with Gabriel Ruse to the inside. This battle for 9th had been single file up to this lap. They're passing another car in the grass. That's Tom Drow in the lap traffic. They clear on by that quickly as Ruse waits now to figure it out for the old hairpin. Freitas holds on to the braking point, forces him to park the bus. All of them clip the grass. Ruse holds on. Ruse tries to give a bump to Freitas.
Every which way you can try and find it, this is where the gloves come off, and you got to start finding moves. Freitas now is going to have to try and make his Porsche the widest Porsche here in Leicestershire, as he now looks to try and drive it through Coppice and get himself enough of a drive off of the exit. He's okay at the moment, but here's where you're going to start thinking about, okay, we're in trouble. This is the last lap of the race, and in towards this chicane. He's only got to do this one more time to hold on to what is 9th position.
You said it there, the white flag has already waved, and they are fighting like this is for the race lead for 9th position. Everyone going with the squiggles and the swirlies. Still, Ruse with a hard send, trying to get to the back bumper for Freitas. All of this is while the race leaders are entering the final sector themselves. Hard fighting in Sector 1 still for this spot. Ruse overshoots part of the track, not able to close up though for a fight quite yet. All of this as well as Sean Campbell has ran away from the drivers looking to fight him. Sean Campbell leads every lap in race 1. He'll take the first checkered of 2 at Donington Park.
And that's just dominance there, just holding on, knowing that there are quick drivers behind, but placing his car in the right position to create that victory, everything that was needed. This battle starting to slow out a little bit. Looks like Roos overdriving the car a little bit in terms of trying to get through, and look who's just behind him. That's Chris Barrett, by the way, who, remember, was dead last almost after lap 2, finds himself back in 11th. That is a great recovery.
He was in fact in last after the spin by 5 seconds. He recovers back to 11th, but the checker flag waves on this fight. Freitas does hold on in the end for 9th position after the attempts coming to 2 to go by Gabriel Ruse. Last of the drivers getting ready to take the checker flag. Tom Drawley, the last of those coming across the stripe. Joshua Thomas, Joshua Wolf also taking the checker to close out the drivers at the tail end of the lead lap. What a first race out of the 2 today, to say the very least, Ocean. It's Sean Campbell, though, who picks up the first of the two checkers, with Scott Brazier, Dallas Pataska, Kurt Crum, along with Ross Banfield and Jamie Conway in the inversion spots. Conway, in turn, will start on the pole for race 2. Elvis Bonello starts in 7th for the next time out. He finishes 7th in this one. Hashimi, Freitas, and Rouge, your top 10.
Indeed, and then when you go to the second page, you have Chris Barrett recovering to 11th place after his dreadful first lap. Jens Holman 12th, Christian Arp 13th, Ryan Walker 14th, then you got Trevor Wawrowski, Lyndon Swaby, Jeff Schmeier, David Melnarovic, Joshua Thomas and Travis Henderson still on the lead lap. Couple of more drivers in that race as well. Joshua Wolf and David Baker. Cordell Colon, last driver on the lead lap. Tom Grayling 1 lap down, and Chan Dirks actually the only one classified as retired on that first event. What a race we had, and now time for a short little 10-minute warm-up. But I must say, Justin, I'm thoroughly impressed with how Sean Campbell was able to handle the pressure, and not only that, but the way he was resisting through his weak point. He was riding that storm himself, and in turn, with his calm driving, not going on the defensive, but holding on to his own strengths and holding on to his own style, not going too defensive, was able to eke Scott Brazier, kind of like almost angering Scott Brazier into trying too hard, and Scott kinda undid his own gains by the end of that race, having to try too hard, getting too close, making a couple of mistakes, and that was the key. So Sean Campbell, amazing mental resilience. We'll see how he handles when he doesn't start from the pole position in race number 2.
He'll be starting 6th for race 2. With that, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, race 2 coverage here on GSRC. You're watching the Major Series in its European region Pro Split coverage for the Porsche Wildcard Cup round here from Donington Park.
iRacing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12 Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iRacing.com.
Welcome back to GSRC's coverage of the Major Series in its European Pro Split here for the Porsche Wildcard Cup round here from Donington Park here on iRacing. Justin Prince, Ossian Puhaka, Jake Sperry with you as we get ready to see how things break down for race 2 of the day. Warm-up is underway for the drivers to get themselves situated and prepared, and about half the drivers have taken the opportunity to put in practice time so far before race 2. Jens Holman amongst those putting in some preparation. Kurt Crum was amongst the inversion top 6, also putting in times the 105s. Jan Durix, after his tough second lap of the race, also picking up some extra experience, along with Dallas Pataska, Ross Banfield, along with Lyndon Swaby and several others. Also, again, it's been some intense racing to say the very least so far. It's tough to be able to try and stop the passes, yes, but it seems so far that drivers have made it clear that they're willing to be patient at times, but if you slip up even a little bit, expect a lot of bumping and banging.
Yeah, you have to be patient or you're going to end up as a patient here. It's going to be a lot more aggression, I think, in race number 2, because those guys starting from the bottom end of top 6, I think Pataska, especially Brazier and also Campbell, are going to be anxious to get into the top end of the field, knowing Conway, Banfield, Crum don't exactly have their pace. They know that from race 1 by now. In warm-up, you can make some setup adjustments, but you can't do miracles there. So, going to be very, very crucial to see if those guys make it out in one piece. Also, keep an eye on some of the people who had a rather poor race number 1. I'm looking at Cordell Cologne, for example, as one of the drivers who may be looking to prove himself. Didn't do well in qualifying, didn't do well in race number 1, but he might want to prove himself. I thought he had some decent pace as race 1 progressed. And then another driver, especially Jan Dirks in that number 45 machine, he's going to be starting dead last. He was 8th fastest in qualifying, so he's definitely among drivers who were 1.5 seconds slower than him. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. And Justin, all I can say is race 1 was interesting in its own way. I think we're going to see a more traditional, exciting, maybe even hyperventilation-inducing race in this one.
Usually based on experience, especially when you factor in an inversion and some of the slip and sliding you're seeing from drivers like Thomas, expecting a lot of slipping and sliding for drivers potentially battling it out, Jake, and that seems to be the trend. Drivers know with the inversion, especially the bigger the inversion, the crazier things can get. It's just 6, though, for this round.
And 6 is a nice number here for this series. I think that you look at when drivers deal with an invert, they go in with a mindset of, if I'm the quickest, I have to get to the front as quickly as possible. It's not always the case. You just need that understanding that overtakes are going to be difficult. It is going to take time. The drivers that are in and around you with 6 are on a very similar skill level, and I think it proved itself over that opening race, Justin, when the top 6 broke away and they had about 15 seconds on the rest of the field.
Dallas Pataska, by the way, is indeed leading this warm-up session, should say, right now. 105.2 the pace. And here's the interesting thing. The temperatures for the track have fluctuated a little bit as this race has gone on here today. The highest it got in terms of Fahrenheit was about 92, 93 degrees during the first race. It has dipped back down, though, although that car has its bumpers and fenders dipped into itself. Back down to 89 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. So track temperature, especially with most quality skies, albeit a more so partly than mostly condition, has stayed around the same, it seems, today, even though it's fluctuated a couple degrees up and down.
Yeah, and I think that's quite important just to keep in mind, is that this track hasn't really moved too much, so there hasn't been a case of one style of setting up the car has been better than any other style. I think that if you've got the conditions right for race 1, you've pretty much got the conditions right for race 2 as well, Justin, and I doubt that we're going to be seeing too many troubles out there from drivers from session to session in terms of how they set that car up and how they go and approach it.
1 minute to go until we get underway for the grid for race 2 of the day with that 6-car invert. Your picks, Jake, first. Who do you think is going to come away with the top points for race 2?
I'm looking at Ross Banfield here. I think he's a driver who's got something to prove. I think that he's been someone who can go out there, can race up near the top, can be aggressive out there. And I think especially wants to try and redeem himself in terms of earlier on in this season. I think he's the sort of driver who would relish a front row start, and with a good start, he'll be very tough to overtake.
Your pick, Ocean?
I'm going to go with Sean Campbell here. I think he's not going to be the one to make the move early on, but I think in the longer run, we have 23 laps here to race. I think he's going to climb to the top later on, and we're going to see how he deals with the overtaking. But I think Racer, maybe Pataska, but especially Scott Racer is going to be one who wants to make it near the top early on, and then Sean Campbell will just, you know, play to his strengths and follow what other people are doing and conserve his tires.
And as drivers continue to light up the tires they were using for the warm-up session and had been using just until now, it's time to get things ready for today's second of two races. With the inversion, it's Jamie Conway, Ross Banfield the front row this time, with Kurt Crum and Dallas Pataska the top four. Brazier, along with Campbell, will be in the top six. Keep an eye on that row. Elvis Bonello, Kamel Hashimi, very, very quiet, finished in 8th spot in the first race. Miguel Freitas and Gabriel Ruse, the top 10, Jake, for race 2.
Absolutely, and that was just all the finishing order. They don't have long to grid up either, so you got the likes of Vavrovsky in there, P15, keep an eye out on, as well as Chris Barrett in 11th. Henderson back there in 20th will be looking for a little bit of something, as well as the likes of those at the back. Jan Dirks will definitely be someone trying to drive forward.
It's going to be an intriguing race number 2, with some of the drivers having some recovery drives, especially towards the back of the grouping too. Now we see if this goes well for these competitors. It looks like all the drivers are ready. All cars are on the grid, the engines are revving. The green lights are off and out. We're underway for race 2. Cleaner launch out of the box this time, but it's still 3 wide. Kurt Crum with an issue through the gears. Near contact for the battle for the race lead. Gabriel Ruse with some bumping nearly. Big contact for Scott Brazier and all that. His right front fender's crushed in as one of the Apex cars spins it again in the heart of the pack. That time it's Hashimi to the infield. Everybody else gets through for now cleanly.
Just about, but that is what can be dangerous off of these starts. You need to be out there and charging. Look at how the front drivers have already broken away from the rest of the pack. Slow out of the old hairpin, then goes one driver there. That's Elvis Bonello, who was very wide down there, and that suddenly allows Josh Thomas a little look up the inside, then trying to find the move, and he slides it and it's going to go around right in front of the field, and everyone scatters in 6s and 7s and just about avoids it up. The smoke screen, Tom Dreiling avoids it as well. This is another scary start. We've got another spinner on the back as well. Trevor Vavrovsky going around.
And Vavrovsky had picked up a decent amount of spots too before his issues, but for Jamie Conway, he holds on to the race lead. Campbell already up 3 positions right in the back bumper of Ross Banfield. Thought about a quick peek, not there yet though. Entering Redgate. Absolute craziness once again to start things off. By the way, Jan Dirks is already up to 18th spot plus 7 after the craziness that happened in Sector 2 as the top 4 look to settle it down.
And this is where calm needs to prevail, and the front 4 build a gap. Surely, Ossian, if you were in this pack and you were looking at this train, you'd be thinking of, okay, let's not make any moves for about 5 to 10 laps. Let's try and drop Scott Brazier and co, as we know Brazier is fast.
Yep, that's the plan here. It's kind of like in the old Skip Barber races, reminding me of that growing up with the Skip Barber Cup, when the lead guys were trying to work together first couple of laps and then just trying to make their way through, trying to create a gap behind them. But the problem is you got Conway, Banfield, Campbell and Pataska there in the top 4. If one of them gets too anxious, if one of them is not happy with the pace of the leader, well, they're gonna want to elevate their position. So you need a lot of communication. It looks like Campbell is not happy with the pace of Banfield, trying to look to the inside, trying to make a move, and that could potentially cost them sweet, precious time. But Sean Campbell has done very well early on to get into that 3rd position, to get into those podium positions. Now he just needs a little bit of calm, little bit of patience between those ears of his, and then he's golden, Justin.
I would say as well, Justin, I just heard Campbell over the radio. He just said that was close in regards to that turn 1 move.
Campbell wants to go still now in the middle of Sector 3, though, towards Coppice. Not going to take the peak quite yet. Keep in mind, yes, indeed. Here we go, though. To the back bumper of Banfield. Will he take it? No, he'll just go for the bump draft. He backs up the braking zone, heading for Roberts. We've seen many passes set up with a good run out of here. Will he set it up again? He's tried it twice. to get alongside Banfield will be the third time being that charm. No, big block, Banfield moves, goes for the pass on the pass. Here he goes for the race lead.
Oh, this is an effort. Barrett was, I believe, watching in his mirrors the entire way through. It looked like maybe it was a chance to break away. Side by side, down the Craner curves, hold through this big left. You got the old hairpin, the huge right-hander, and Campbell on the outside of that's got to try and cut back underneath. Nobody able to put the power down, so here comes the move then from Dallas Pataska trying to find a way through. Now back to the race lead. It becomes again outside, though, for this big right coming through of McLeod, and it's going to be a squeeze in contact. Conway there, making it all work. Into the grass they go. It's going to be a 9-car train for the lead, and they fight still. Pataska on the outside.
Campbell holds on to the inside still for second position, tries to sort himself out. Pataska tries to build up the run. Brazier back within the mix. Banfield tries to regroup in pack 2 now. Bit of a lockup for Conway with an uncompromised entry to the corner. Keep an eye on Campbell for the exit, not able to close up quite yet. As here comes Pataska for the switch to the left.
Absolutely, and it's going on just behind them as well, in towards Redgate once again. And this is what I would believe you'd say Jamie Conway's thinking of. And in the grass then, struggling off of the exit, goes Dallas Pataska. Had a little bit of a wiggle there, a bit of contact as they went through off the exit. Pataska having to take to the grass. He drops the place, but not much. And there's trouble in the background then for the number 33 machine out there. That's Tom Dreiling trying to find his way into the pits. He's had a torrid day, but look at how much defending is having to be done by Jamie Conway. Through every corner, he's on the inside. He's trying to hold this pack up and just desperately stop the dam from breaking, so to speak, again to the outside.
Campbell, though, breaks through it. Campbell is clear. Sean Campbell to the race lead. Pataska now side by side with Brazier again for third. Brazier gives it to him. Pataska waits. Conway takes another peek. Both of them trying to avoid the sausage curves. Bad corner exit for Conway. Pataska lost a lot of ground trying to back it up. The top 4 now single file. This main pack with all the fighting stretches as far back as 11th. Banfield wants some spots back, gets one.
Oh, he will. Straight to the inside, and he has to check up Scott Brazier. Sits him up through the corner. Had to lift through it, and that allows Kurt Crum now onto the back then as they charge down the Craner curves on their 6th lap of this race. And this is probably the worst scenario out there for all of these drivers in the train, because if they had Conway at the front, they could think about fighting and getting themselves to a victory. Now the fastest driver in the field here is at the front. Ocean, when you see the fastest driver in the field take to the front of the field in a reverse grid like this, you suddenly panic and go, this race is going exactly the same way. A mistake just there for Jamie Conway. Suddenly, here comes Dallas Pataska, and I tell you what, he is going to have himself probably a Texas-sized overtake down into the final section.
Yeah, so there goes Pataska through to the second place. Conway giving it to him under braking. Let's see if Conway fights it into turn number 1, and then I'll go to analysis later on.
Oh!
Look at the... Oh!
What is Brazier doing trying to block Kurt Crum to the grass?
That, I think, is just Kurt Crum there, seeing there was just the slightest open gap. Brazier, wise to it, tries to cover it off as early as he possibly could see it, and that could have easily been a heap lot worse.
That could have been a plane crash. We don't have the replay of it right now, but Brazier was definitely late in that move. You cannot make that move so late. If you leave the room on the inside, then you have to also keep the door open. If you keep it open at one point, I mean, you can't just make a move in the middle of the straight when somebody's already moving alongside you. That's a little bit too late, and that's blocking, unfortunately, not defensive driving.
Yeah.
And we're gonna hopefully see it again here into the main straight as they come. No, we're not. So we're gonna see it soon. But yeah, interesting scenes early on, and I want to mention Scott Brazier. He might be pissed off because he was doing all the right things there in third place earlier on when we had that fight for the lead, when we had Campbell fight for the lead. He was doing all the right things, all the proper things, all the good things, just staying calm, being patient. Unfortunately, he was kind of backed into the leaders, so he couldn't really back out anymore because he had drivers behind him. And when his exit was compromised to the back straight, he just lost a position for free. So he dropped all the way to 5th at one point, and he has to work his way back from there. So he doesn't want to lose any more positions at this point, Justin.
Agree with you on that, Mark. By the way, Hashimi's also had another spin as well. Everyone's starting to kick up a little bit of a sand trap as well in all this. Campbell has ran away from the field by nearly 2 seconds as the train has settled down. Campbell continues to show that speed on the short run. Here's the big question, Jake. Will this keep up for him pace-wise? Not only does he have traffic much earlier this time with Tom driving up the road, but 2, remember, Campbell had a similar gap build up, not as big though, where he fell off quickly for about 10 laps before he finally broke away again at the very end of the race.
Campbell's last lap, a 105.1. Pataska's last lap, 105.0. So 1/10 difference on that last lap, and Pataska is pretty much on rails trying to chase this down. If he wants to go through, he knows he needed to get away from Conway. He's managed that, and now all of these drivers find themselves in a holding pattern. They're trying to hold on. The train goes back to Jens Hohmann in 9th position in this race right now, a driver who started, remember, with his qualifying 19th, gained 7 up to 12th, now up into 9th. He has probably been the most impressive driver gaining places throughout the course of racing here today, and he's done so silently as he's on the back of the likes of Roos and Barrett and Crum and Brazier. These are all the names you expect to be up there fighting for victories and top 5s race in and race out in this series.
And all this as well, keep in mind some of the drivers continuing recovery drives from the first race even. Chris Barrett is 7th in this choo-choo train, up 4 spots from the drop of the green flag in race 2. He's right now behind Kurt Crum, for example. Behind that, you have Christian Arp, who had a very quiet first race. For him of the season, the 11 cars up +3, battling Miguel Freitas. You also throw in Jens Holman in that grouping. He's up +3. A lot of the drivers who really struggled in race 1, much better in race 2 right now to settle it on out, to try and stake their claim for good points for the other 50% total available on offering for this round.
He's certainly trying his best, and he'll be looking to try and move on forward. But as you can see with this front group, as they try and rattle through the middle section of the track, you've got to try and use a lap, sometimes even 2 laps, to get yourself to alongside. Crum is there. He's got Chris Barrett just behind him, who's trying to search for the right way through. But everyone's got the same advantage on everyone else on this train, with the draft running over towards that final chicane. They know if they try and go out there and be too aggressive, they're going to effectively have trouble with their tyres. There you can see the lap car of Tom Dreiling getting out of the way then. And this is probably where you'd say you need a little bit of help. You need to find a way through. This isn't the widest circuit in the world. There's a reason why this track is so difficult. There's a reason why they haven't raced Formula One here since the early to mid-90s. And this is the sort of place where if you are going to go and make a move and get something sorted, wise decision by Dreiling, escape to the grass, don't do anything untoward, just get well out of the way of the battle going on for the lead.
Keep in mind that Grand Prix you're referring to in particular is where some may call the drive of the decade happened with Ayrton Senna in 1993. It was affected by rain that year in the European Grand Prix. More than a minute was the victory margin over Damon Hill that year after he started 5th in that race, went to first in the opening lap, pulled off and away. At that circuit, of course, a very emotional season in the end by a few weeks afterwards. But for these drivers now, they're at halfway in this race for today's round. No one's been able to really get themselves poking their way around yet. A bit of a draft lock train for me, Aposion.
Yep, and mentioning Ayrton Senna, it's been 28 years to the day today that we lost Ayrton Senna at this San Marino Grand Prix in 1994, along with Roland Ratzenberger. Of course, never forgetting him in this same qualifying. But on a brighter topic, yes, we are here in sim racing. Don't have too many troubles regarding horrific incidents here, but we have some interesting packs forming up. Like the one we're following here, you got Brazier trying to still make his way through Banfield, and they're both stuck behind Conway. So Conway right now, he could take a page out of Campbell's book, Sean Campbell's book, and just hold his own racing line and trying to eke the drivers behind him into battling each other. I think that's his best shot. A fight between Banfield and Scott Brazier is Jamie Conway's best shot at keeping that 3rd place, but whether he can do it and whether he has the pace to do it, is a completely different thing. Mind you, Campbell's been the fastest driver today, so he could stay calm and still keep a good pace. Let's see how Jamie Conway does that.
See if this settles things in the right direction when it comes to a few of these competitors. No major peaks quite yet still. The interesting thing with all this is with Brazier, we see how big that damage is. You can already see from even out here, the right front tire is kind of very much so poking out from the fender. That's how big the damage is on that 555. He struggled at first before the battles really kicked into gear for the race lead, but now that he's got the assistance of draft in front and behind, it seems, Jake, he's been able to really keep up here. You see that damage, how big it is. Everybody else's right front tire, it's supposed to be inside that fender.
Someone's eaten his front fender. That's not ideal at all if you're Scott Brazier, and he's going to have to work harder than a lot of other drivers if he wants to get through. Aerodynamics, not as important in these machines, but still mightily important. He's going to be losing a little bit in a straight line because the different turbulences that go over the car, and he's going to have to try and find something really special to make a pass. Do want to touch back on Ayrton Senna once again. Two bits of trivia that I never get to bring out. He set the fastest lap of the race back in 1993 by driving through the pit lane. That was before they had speed limiters, and he did so by mistake because he was called in and nobody was there waiting for him. And the final trophy he ever got was a golden Sonic the Hedgehog as the race was sponsored by Sega. Here comes Brazier, now looking up the inside over the outside of McLaren's. Can't get that.
He tries to get himself a golden ring of a position, trying to speed his way from the outside. Banfield tries to give a pinch back. Banfield with the preferred line heading towards the corner, though. Brazier tries to set it hard. Through Compass, though, Banfield with a better run. Banfield nearly clear. Brazier getting a whiff of the trap, though, from Conway. Banfield outbroken by the 555, still holds on, and there goes Scott Brazier. He's in the sin again in the Major Series, and there goes everything. Again, Brazier, he tries to go all for nothing. He's now dropped from the top 5 to the back end of the pack to 8th.
And this is what we say, it's all or nothing. Jens Hohmann down the inside then as they go to the Craner curves. And if you're not going to get it pulled up in time, there's not much you can do. He wanted that spot. He went around the outside at McLaren's, around the outside at Coppice. He got to the final chicane and said, I'll go around the outside. But Ossian, you know, third time's the charm. Sometimes you do have to know when you need to back out of a move.
Yeah, so when you go all or nothing, or double or nothing, whatever, racing drivers usually tend to think of the reward and not the risk. They know the risk, everyone knows the risk at this level, but they don't think of the risk. So when the bad thing happens, they usually call it bad luck. Well, it's not bad luck, it's a decision he made. And sadly, for Brazier, that decision turned out to be a very poor one. He's now in 9th place with that damage and has to make his way back through that pack. The problem is he's only got 8 laps to do so, so it's going to be interesting to say the least. I've said interesting a lot today, but it's going to be very, very compelling to follow what Scott Brazier will do here. Mind you, he still has that bit of damage, which is not going to make it any easier, especially now that he's had to fight so much. His tires are not going to like it. He's in a compromised position. He's probably in a compromised position both physically in terms of the car and mentally in terms of his frustration that has to be mounting. The good thing for him is that Jens Hohmann ahead of him looks to be taking some wide lines too, and he potentially has at least one freebie coming up soon if he just keeps it calm, Justin.
Well, and stay calm is the huge thing. Hohmann in that 8th spot. Kurt Crum, you're following along with, still in the midst of this pack. It has separated out as a result of that major send before. Keep in mind, Conway's newly broken the draft, in fact. Here's a look, though, as Brazier looks to take another peek. He learns his lesson this time. No double wide, heading to Roberts. Instead, he waits for the double move attempt. 3 wide, heading into Redgate. Brazier, will he keep it up? No. He lets Hohmann try and sort it out for the outside with Gabriel Ruse on the inside.
Oh, brilliant around the outside from Jens Hohmann. He saw how slow off the exit Gabriel Roos was. Brazier didn't want to risk his race outright, decided, okay, I'm going to have to be patient, but now you look at how much this has cost them. They've dropped over a second from the group. Homan now having to be defensive against Roos, who wants to gain that place back, and this is what we get from this style of racing. Round you go. There goes Brazier, backwards under Starkey's bridge, and his race has gone from bad to absolutely diabolical.
Brazier trying to get a run, but he clipped some of the grass coming to the right side of the rumble strip, and it's what throws Brazier's race from bad to worse. Race 2 of the day has continued to spiral. He's now fallen all the way back to 14th after being in contention of the win in race 1 of the day.
Wow, it just shows you how quickly a race can go in the way that it does. He's now racing in terms of a pack right now as he goes through the final section of the road with Josh Wolf, Jan Dirks and Lyndon Swaby. So that's how far back he is. That's what he'll be looking at between now and the end. What I have noticed, though, with some of the battles that have gone on is that Jamie Conway was able to break away a little bit in terms of the race in third position. He got out over a second at one point to the group behind, but I'm really impressed with Ross Banfield's driving. He's pulled himself back down to 0.6 of a second as with 6 laps to go. We continue watching that scrap going on and the drive of Brazier as he goes around the circuit. The one thing I would say, it has been pretty plain sailing for number 5, Sean Campbell, because he's now out to a lead of nearly 3 seconds.
Meanwhile, in that main grouping of cars, Chris Barrett is now the caboose of it, and he's building up some momentum as well on top of things for a top 5 with 5 laps to go. Trying to sort his way around Kurt Crum. Remember, Crum had that poor launch from the green. He's been able to still hold on to the top 5. It's been around where he's been running throughout the day today. But it's still going to be intriguing if he can hold off Barrett, who is trying to recover from the top 5 in race 1 starting blocks to a poor launch in that race to spinning and being 3 seconds behind the rest of the field to try and recover solid points for this round.
And I'll tell you what, this is mightily impressive. And this is the sort of drive for Chris Barrett that you'd say at this point in time it would be a real confidence booster. And you look at this track and you look at the way he's been making moves. He hasn't been too aggressive. He's just been picking them off one at a time and going through the train. And I wonder if you would do exactly the same as what Chris Barrett's doing. Just wait for the right time to come along. You're at 5 laps to go. Okay, maybe you need to push the envelope right now on Kurt Crum and just get a little bit closer. But, you know, I don't think he's put a foot wrong since the opening couple of laps of race 1.
Well, it's been so long since I've raced seriously that my race would probably go more the ways of Scott Brazier in this one. Just trying a little bit too hard. But, yeah. You can see some battle scars on the... Oh, and you can actually see a pass here for Ross going past Homan, I think, on the inside into turn number 1 behind Barrett. Yep, that's the move done, and Ross moving himself up to 7th place. But yeah, Barrett has some battle scars on the right front side of his car, and he has to mind those. But aside from that, he's been very calm, very patient. Now I wonder how patient he can be behind Kurt Crum, because Kurt Crum's losing steadily time to Banfield and to Conway. It looks like Banfield and Conway are not battling right now, so gonna be interesting to see if that moves later on, and if we're gonna see a battle for 4th place, or if it's gonna be 2 separate battles between those drivers. Justin?
Especially with 3 laps to go this time by, not a lot of time to sort things out for many of these drivers. Rose is breaking away now from the 271 in that pack up the road. Conway still is that main car. Crum is losing ground with Chris Barrett. All this is while Pataska's ran away in 2nd by more than 4 seconds in a similar interval rate compared to the first race. Here's a look at Ross Banfield. And Banfield trying to go a little bit more to the inside through towards the Craner curves. Try and find a way to get up to Conway again. The Apex Tech car looks to hold and play defense. Banfield tries to go offensive, heading to Starkey's Bridge. This is the closest he's been throughout this run now over the past 5 laps.
And what's telling is he's using all the road. And look at this. Here comes Jared up the inside, trying to take this away. Pushes Crum right out onto the curb, trying to find this. They'll fight to Coppice. Crum's got the overspeed here, can try and cut underneath, but this corner goes on forever. Little wiggle from Chris Barrett on the inside, and there goes Kurt Crum. He holds on, so now it's definitely 2 battles of 2, but I have been impressed with Banfield over the last couple of laps. He's using all of the road to get himself closer. He's being that little bit more aggressive, and now he's given himself a chance with 2 laps left on the board.
Barrett may have used up his chance. Kurt Crum had made a mistake to set up that opportunity. He's now 3 car lengths down to about 2 car lengths back. Banfield is still with about the same distance too, compared to that battle up the road. Will Banfield be able to pressurize a mistake from Jamie Conway? Deeper braking from Banfield. This is where some of the drivers have been trying to set things up. Good exit from Conway, lap and a half to go.
Yeah, a lap and a half left. There was one car there slow towards the rear of the field. That wouldn't have been good for David Baker as he goes through, but look at where he's sitting at this moment in time. The middle of the lap is where it is lighting up for Ross Banfield, who knows that he has got that pace, he's got that ability, fighting off of the exit. Yes, he's back a car length and a half at the moment, but if he gets a good chicane here, gets a great run, he'll really have a chance into Redgate. That's where I think it's going to be alert for him. How does he put the pressure on? Big jumping over that curb from one Mr. Jamie Conway, and suddenly it's there. Which way is he going to have to go? It's going to have to be to the outside to try and make this move, and as they go through Redgate corner, it is going to be a fight down the Craner curves, or is it? Compton, he's going to push him out.
Banfield kicked off the racetrack on the final lap. White flag is waving across the circuit. Banfield now 5 car lengths back. That may have been the position, sealed right there with that bumping and banging. Kurt Crum looking to close up the Banfield. All of this as well up at the very front of the field. Sean Campbell has put on a clinic and a half today. All but 4 laps led by one Sean Campbell. Once again, he's channeled the energy from his helmet with the help of Nicolas Cage, and his pace has been outright dominant. He'll try and close it out to the final corners. Sean Campbell completes the sweep. He scores maximum points at Donington Park.
A double of the highest caliber. Thales Pataska threw everything at him, couldn't get that. And Jamie Conway is going to hold on for that 3rd place, and he had to use every trick in the book to get that, because he was thrown the kitchen sink throughout every single lap of this race. This was not an easy result, and everyone is trying to fight for everything they've got. And it has been a spin actually at the final corner. It's Swaby who's in the wall and almost mounting the wall there as he went through. That is going to be a shame for him. That's some drop positions late on.
Swaby was battling for about the 15th position before the end of this race. Absolute craziness, to say the very least, towards the end. The last of the drivers to complete this one will be Hashimi, Thomas, and Baker. But it's Sean Campbell with a full sweep of the round. An unbelievable day for the number 5. Post-race coverage coming up just around the corner. You're watching GSRC for the Major Series in its European region, Pro Split, for the Porsche Cup Wildcard Round from Donington.
This is the world's premier online racing simulation. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat from your home computer with the most realistic online motorsports experience you'll find anywhere. Race virtually in the world's biggest events with officially licensed series, cars, and tracks. From the high banks of Daytona to the blistering speeds of Indianapolis, the dirt of Eldora to the world's most legendary road courses. It's all here, and with more than 180,000 people just like you already driving, you'll always have someone to race. Ready to get behind the wheel? Sign up at iRacing.com to get started. This is your chance to get behind the wheel. The opportunity to race just like the pros. From the grassroots levels, where we all got our start, to the most popular race cars on the planet. From the fairgrounds of Nashville to the high banks of Daytona, to tracks that will never be forgotten. Realistic driving, intense competition, all from the comfort of your own home. This is the ultimate motorsports simulation. This is iRacing.
Sean Campbell put on a clinic and a half today for the Major Series in its European region Pro Split for the Porsche Cup wildcard round from Donington Park. He picked up the second victory of the day, this time by a whopping 4 seconds over defending series champion Dallas Vitaska. Jamie Conway started in the pole for race 2 and finished in third today, with Ross Banfield, Kurt Crum your top 5. Chris Barrett, Gabriel Ruse, Jans Holman, Christian Arp, and a very quiet day for David Monerwich. He rounded out the top 10, 18th to 10th for the number 69 Jake.
Yeah, that was a very quiet and resolute result for Narovich. Ryan Walker will get out of Dodge with an 11th place finish, with Elvis Bonello in 12th. Miguel Freitas finishing back there in 13th. And we've seen the trials and tribulations of Scott Brazier here in the 555. 14th position overall. That will be a frustrating one at the office. Jan Dirks managed to recover back in that race, up 10 spots. He got 15th, with Joshua Wolf in 16th. Truva Vavrovsky getting a jump up late on. He goes to 17th, with Lyndon Swaby spinning at the final corner. That cost him a place, 18th only. The issues that we saw late on with a lap and a half to go went to Jeff Schmeier. He managed to get 19th position despite all of that. Rounding out the top 20 of 25 was Travis Henderson.
21st spot went to Kamel Hashimi after his issues on the final lap. Joshua Thomas, David H. Baker, Tom Dowling, and Cordell Colon rounded out the entrants for race 2 here today. And as the drivers continue to make their way to the paddock with their celebrations here, your opinions on how today fared out, Ocean, in terms of a lot of the battling, a lot of the shuffling, but in the end, there was one constant. Sean Campbell absolutely dominated in terms of the pace, short run and at the end of each run.
Yeah, I think he made only one single mistake, or rather was naughty only once throughout the race, and that was when he basically crowded his assailant out for the battle for second place. But aside from that, it was a very solid effort from him. And we saw the importance of racecraft here as well. So a lot of the moves came as a result of long time battles for setting up the move and giving the room and leaving enough room for you to be able to pull that move off was crucial here today. If you were being too aggressive, well, you ended up on the back of the field sooner or later. So it was a calm driver's day, and it was a thinking driver's day. It was the kind of race we usually see in longer events, in endurance events, when you go to 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours even. But it was 2 sprint races, but still we saw a lot of thinking driving and patience being the virtue today, which is kind of what I expected. I didn't expect it to be that strong. Honestly, I expected more beating and banging, which thankfully didn't happen too much today. Couple of argy-bargy incidents, but aside from that, a very, very, very good drive from Sean Campbell. A very good drive from Pataska and Conway as well in race number 2. And I want to give a shout out once again to David Melnarovich in race number 2. A very quiet climb from 18 to 10th. Good job by him.
An absolutely impressive day for some, but for others, they had to be thinking of what if you had to consider, especially when it comes to the driver of the 555, Scott Brazier. To quote one Nicolas Cage, to give essence to the helmet for Campbell, it doesn't matter how far you run. There are some demons you just can't escape. And the demons seem to pop up that we've seen from that race in Australia a few weeks ago. The last round where he had some struggles in the Lotuses, and now here today.
I mean, he's aggressive. I mean, give him credit. I don't want him to sacrifice that in terms of being a driver. He goes out there, he puts his heart on his sleeve, he puts his heart in the 4 tires that he goes out and drives with, and he tries to do his absolute best and get himself to the top of the field. Is that going to mean that sometimes he's too aggressive? He puts himself in, I would say, more riskier positions? Yes. Does it hurt him sometimes? Yes. But this is the sort of day that I would probably say, in terms of his results, we get a look at the Nicolas Cage helmet from Mr. Campbell. I don't quite know how you see through the visor, but that's still mightily impressive. But what I'd say is that it's always going to be very, very difficult out there when you are that sort of driver. You are going to get into slumps like that where every race is going to feel like pulling teeth out. What I'd say is that he shouldn't compromise his instincts. I think that it's very easy when you get into this position to doubt yourself as a driver. But Scott Brazier will come back. He will find victories. He will find top 5 finishes. He's just someone who's going to go out there, is going to be aggressive, and you've just got to find a balance. And I just think it's slightly skewed right now. 5% might just be all it needs. It's just a small tweak, and I think he's got himself sorted.
With that, though, as the drivers continue their celebrations amongst themselves, we'd like to thank you for tuning in for today's race here at Donington Park. We'd like to thank the companies who provide the software and hardware for our broadcasts listed up on screen, with initial thanks given to Jude Lawan, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to today's team in Jake, Ozzy, Zach, and Dougie. You can find more information about GSRC at globalsimracingchannel.com or through our social media listed on screen. Be sure to check out our merchandise store as well at gsrc.storyby.com. We keep a link in the description down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. The next race on the calendar for the Major Series is a star. It's the Indianapolis 500-mile race, one of the most prestigious races of the season for the Major Series, and it starts a very prestigious window of the season with 3 legendary races back to back to back over the course of a month. It starts with the 500-mile race from the Brickyard, May the 15th. But before then, there is still another wild card to pull out of the deck. The Americans in their region for the Major Series have their wild card round coming up tonight. Several competitors to keep an eye on include Brian Lockwood and our own Christian Challenger. 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time for the pro drivers. Once again on GSRC, be sure to watch. That is at Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. And once again, remind you one more time, be sure to also keep an eye on the Indy 500 for the Major Series on the 15th. We also have a number of other series listed on screen who will be also racing in the upcoming hours and days. Be sure to check them out and mark them down your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.